Dwayne Brewer goose-stepped down the beer aisle of the Franklin Walmart wearing a latex chimp mask he'd found on the floor by the Halloween decorations. The mask was hot and his breathing was loud. The inside smelled of cheap molded rubber, and he slicked the nylon hair back through his fingers while he chuckled at a woman who sneered. She wore pastel-colored scrubs and white tennis shoes, her highlighted hair pulled back in a ponytail. Through the eye slits of the mask, he saw a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with one of her fingers hooked in the corner of her mouth, standing beside the woman. Dwayne scratched under his armpit with one hand and clawed at the back of his head with the other, hopping around bow-legged like a monkey, and the child laughed. He pulled the mask off and tossed it into the open cooler, his skin cold with sweat as he ran his hand over his face and reached for a case of Bud Heavy. Tearing a ragged hole in the cardboard, he fished out a beer and cracked the top. "Have a blessed day," he said with a wide smile, tilting the open can toward the woman and nodding. She eyed him like the fiend he was, her little girl hiding behind her leg, spellbound with curiosity as the giant man before her swallowed half the can in one tremendous gulp. The thing about Walmart was that even a man like Dwayne Brewer could go unnoticed. People pushed their buggies with dead-eyed stares, everything sliding by in the periphery. Consumerism, scaled this large, had a way of camouflaging class. At the end of the aisle, he squeezed past a beefy gal in tiny shorts who had a baby on each hip and 3 children running circles around her. One of the kids reached out as he made his next lap and knocked an end cap of Cool Ranch Doritos onto the floor. The woman was in the middle of a conversation with someone she knew, an older woman who had a toddler with her finger up her nose riding in the buggy. The beefy gal kept saying over and over, "Lord, no, this ain't mine," shaking the child on her left hip. "Me and Clyde stopped after this one," shaking the one on her right. "This here's Sarah's. You remember Sarah, don't you? This is Sarah's little girl, Tammy. She's my niece." Buggies were banging and lights were flashing and cash registers were beeping and kids were wrestling a Halloween blow-up ghost decoration that was meant to stand in the front yard, and the sheer madness of it was enough to send any sane person into a seizure. But Dwayne didn't have a care in this world. He strutted right through the middle of the chaos, smiling because it was Friday and he had a wad of cash in his pocket from pawning 5 stolen chainsaws and a flat-screen TV. Black teddies and blood-red lingerie were rolled back to $9.87. He finished that first beer standing by the floor rack, running satin through his fingers with his eyes closed, daydreaming about the last woman he'd slept with. When he was finished, he crumpled the can in his fist, balanced it in the cup of a beige-colored bra, and opened another. From where he stood, he could see straight down the shoe aisle where a kid sat on a bench. The boy reminded Dwayne of his brother. Shaggy, strawberry blonde hair covered his ears, and his red skin was dotted with freckles. Aside from a thick pair of Coke bottle glasses, black military frames, he could have been a spitting image of Sissy at 13 or 14 years old. The kid wore a shabby shirt and grass-stained jeans that were muddied at the knees. He was trying on a pair of gray-colored tennis shoes, some off-brand jobs with Velcro straps. Out of nowhere, 2 boys came around the corner and loomed over him. A boy in tight jeans with hair that sliced at an angle across his eyes snatched one of the shoes out of the boy's hands, looked it over, shook his head, and crowed. At that distance, Dwayne couldn't hear what was said, but he understood. He could read it on that poor boy's beaten face. He'd heard it all his life, about the house he grew up in and the car his daddy drove, that his shoes weren't any good and neither were his clothes. He heard it about his drunk grandfather who stood on the bridge in town and cussed at the river when he was old and lost his mind. He heard it about having a funny haircut and for smelling musty after gym class, heard it for getting free lunches, heard it because someone saw him standing outside the laundromat, heard it because his mama worked the register at Rosie's. He'd heard that word, trash, all his life, and over the course of 36 years, he'd heard about enough. There were 2 ways to cope, but Dwayne had only ever known the one. He'd haul off and open a boy's head to the white meat in the blink of an eye, and that'd be that. They don't talk so much with blood in their mouth, he thought, and it was true. But he'd seen the other way of coping in his brother, the way bitterness and anger, sadness and sorrow meld into a vacant stoicism. Bury it inside. Keep your eyes forward.